I was halfway through gluing a picture of Emma in her kindergarten recital dress when my phone buzzed on the table beside me. Afternoons in my little house were quiet these days. The television was off, the radio silent. Just the tick of the old wall clock and the soft rasp of paper as I sorted 30 years of photographs into neat piles. I had written for Emma's wedding in my best handwriting on the front of a new album, the kind with thick ivory pages and little corners for the photos. It felt good, in a way, to have a project, something my hands could do while my mind wandered back over all the versions of my daughter I'd loved. In the photo I was holding, she was about 7, missing her 2 front teeth, clutching a cheap plastic bouquet and beaming at the camera. I smiled without thinking, the way a body breathes without being told. The buzz came again. I wiped a bit of glue off my thumb and reached for the phone, expecting another link to centerpiece ideas or bridesmaid dresses. Emma had been sending me things at all hours lately. What about these napkins, Mom? Too much tulle. Half the time I didn't know what I was looking at. But I said what mothers say, "You'll be beautiful no matter what, sweetheart." Her name glowed on the screen, Emma. My heart lifted the way it always did when I saw it. I tapped the message, "Mom, don't come to my wedding. It's better for everyone if you stay away." I frowned, certain I had misread it. The letters seemed to slide around, swimming in front of my eyes. I blinked, held the phone closer to my face. My thumb scrolled instinctively, looking for more. There was nothing. Just that one sentence, "Don't come to my wedding." I heard myself whisper, as if saying it out loud would make it sound less insane. I read it again. Then a third time. Maybe my old eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe she meant, "Don't worry, Mom. Just come to my wedding. It's better." And the words got jumbled. Auto-corrected strange things sometimes. My chest felt tight. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. I hit call before I knew I was doing it. Her picture came up, the one of her at 25, laughing on a beach somewhere with friends I didn't know. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then her voicemail clicked on, bright and cheerful. "Hey, it's Emma. Leave a message and I'll get back to you." "Emma, honey, it's Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think your phone sent me something by mistake. Call me back." "Okay. I'm working on your album." I hung up and stared at the screen. The tiny icons at the top told me everything was fine. Bars for service, battery half full, everything normal. Inside me, nothing was normal. I typed with fingers that didn't feel like my own. "Emma, what do you mean? Did something happen? Please call me." The little delivered popped up under my message. No 3 dots. No reply. My knees suddenly felt weak. I sank into the chair, my hand groping for the edge of the table like I might fall. My heart was thudding so hard I could feel it pressing against my ribs. 68 years old, I thought vaguely. This is how people end up in the emergency room. 10 days. In 10 days, my only daughter was supposed to walk down an aisle in a white dress. And I was supposed to be there, sitting in the front row in the navy blue dress hanging in my closet, trying not to cry so I wouldn't ruin my makeup. I had pictured it 1,000 times. Her bouquet, her father's cufflinks sewn inside the lining of her gown so he'd be with her. The 2 of us hugging in some quiet corner before everything started, me smoothing a loose tendril of hair like I had on her first day of school. Now my phone was telling me I wasn't invited. I looked around my kitchen like the room might offer an explanation. The little curtains I'd sewn myself, faded but spotless. The fridge cluttered with magnets and grandchildren's crayon drawings. The table scarred from years of homework and family dinners. This house had held us together after my husband died. I had worked nights and weekends, come home bone-tired, and still made pancakes on Saturday mornings so the kids wouldn't feel the empty space at the table too much. "I raised you," I murmured, my voice catching. "I raised you alone after your father died. I helped pay for college, listened to you cry over every boy who broke your heart. And now this." My gaze fell on the corner of a bank statement peeking out from under the album, memory layered over the hurt like salt in a wound, half the caterer's bill. The deposit for the charming little venue Emma had always dreamed about, even though she'd never mentioned it until she saw it on some wedding website. The money for the dress she swore she'd pay back when things settled. Then the condo. That big, terrifying wire transfer that had drained 20 years of careful saving in a single click. "Mom, this is the last piece we need," she'd said back then. "Mark and I can handle the mortgage after, I swear. It's an investment in my future." My investment apparently came with a clause I hadn't known about: silence, distance, and a text message telling me not to show my face. The way he'd said, "You've done amazingly for a secretary's salary," as if I should get a gold star for not starving. How his hand had rested a little too possessively on Emma's shoulder when I'd asked about splitting wedding costs fairly with his parents. "Mark thinks it's better if we keep finances simple," Emma had told me on the phone when I asked why all my checks were being written directly to them instead of the vendors. "You know, one account for everything. It's easier for taxes." I'd felt a little sting then, but I let it go. Maybe I was old-fashioned. Young people did things differently now. And Linda, sweet, smiling Linda with her perfect manicure and soft, dangerous voice. At that dinner last month, between bites of salad, she'd said, "Sometimes older folks just complicate things. Young couples need a fresh start, without all that baggage." She'd laughed like it was a joke, the others laughing weakly with her. I remember setting my fork down, suddenly not hungry anymore. At the time, I'd told myself I was being sensitive. Grief makes you hear insults where there aren't any. But now, with that message burning a hole in my hand, those words came back like a bad echo. "Am I really the problem?" I asked the empty room. There had been arguments. Yes, I had complained about cutting the guest list, wanted to invite my church friends. Emma said we couldn't afford it, that the venue was intimate, that Mark's colleagues and his parents' golf friends had to come. We'd bickered over flowers, over whether she should wear my veil. Nothing that should have added up to this. Emma could be sharp when she was stressed. I knew that. But cruel. This was cruelty. And my girl, the little girl who used to curl up in my lap and say she'd never leave me. Not naturally, not without someone feeding her poison. I sat like that for a long time, the minutes stretching, the light in the kitchen shifting from gold to gray. My phone stayed mute. The silence from my daughter rang louder than any words. Somewhere between one heartbeat and the next, the tears stopped. The shaky, panicked breathing evened out. My eyes felt dry, almost gritty. It was like a switch flipped inside me. If Emma wouldn't explain, then I needed to understand the situation another way. I pushed the chair back and walked to the small desk in the corner of the living room. The top drawer stuck, the way it always did, and I had to jiggle it before it slid open. Inside was a manila folder, a little bent at the corners from being opened and closed over the years. "House and Bank Stewardie Important," I had written on the tab in blue ink. I carried it back to the table like it was something alive and dangerous. I laid out the papers carefully, copies of the wire transfer for the condo, the photocopied checks for the caterer and the florist, the receipt from the bridal boutique, right next to the picture of Emma at 7, frosting on her nose. A month ago, the bank had called me just to verify a password reset request on my account. "You must have hit the button by mistake, Mrs. Carter," the young man had said when I insisted I hadn't. And a year before that, my son Alex had shaken his head at Thanksgiving when I told him my plan to leave the house equally to both children. "Just be careful with online stuff, Mom," he'd said. "Call me before you click anything weird." I had laughed, said, "Who would want to hack a tired old lady's account?" Now I wasn't laughing. I picked up my phone again, not to look at Emma's message, but to scroll through my contacts. My thumb flicked past her name, past caterer and florist and Dr. Singh. Past Linda, who had insisted on putting her number in my phone, in case you ever need help understanding the contracts. "If my own daughter won't talk to me," I said softly, "then I need someone who will tell me the truth." I stopped on my son's name, Alex. My firstborn, always a little distant, living in another state with his spreadsheets and his meetings, but steady. When his father died, he'd been 14 and tried to act like a man, mowing lawns and insisting on paying the electric bill 1 month with his own money. He was the one who nagged me about two-factor authentication and strong passwords. I pressed his name before I could lose my nerve. The phone rang once, twice. Each ring sounded like it was yanking something inside my chest. On the third ring, he answered. I closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the folder, the photos, the single line from Emma that had cracked my world. "No," I said quietly. "I think something is very wrong with your sister, and maybe with my money, too." I heard his silence on the other end, sharp and alert. In that pause, I had no idea just how much that one phone call was about to unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. "Start from the beginning," Alex said, his voice low and careful. "What's really been going on with Emma?" I pressed the phone tighter to my ear and stared at the album on the table, pages half filled with crooked smiles and school pictures. The beginning, it felt like a lifetime ago. "All right," I sighed. "Let me start from the beginning, or at least from where it started to change. When your father died, I almost broke. You were 14, remember? Emma was 10. One minute he was laughing over burnt toast at the kitchen counter. The next there was a phone call and a stranger's voice telling me he'd never be coming home. Heart attack, they said. Quick and merciful. Maybe for him. For us, it was anything but. Those first years after, this house felt too big and too small all at once. Too big because of the empty space in our bed, at the dinner table, in the passenger seat of the car. Too small because every bill, every problem, every fear rushed right at me, and there was nowhere to duck. I picked up extra shifts at the office, sometimes typing until my fingers ached. I'd come home bone-tired, shoes in my hand so I wouldn't wake you kids, and still make sure there was something hot on the stove. I remember standing in the bleachers at your soccer games with my work badge, still clipped to my collar, the hospital cafeteria smell clinging to my clothes. I gnawed off at the edge of Emma's bed while she showed me her homework, jerking awake when her little hand patted my cheek. "Mom, you're tired," she'd whisper. "You can sleep. I'll read to you tonight." She was my little shadow back then. If I was folding laundry, she sat beside the basket, mismatching socks on purpose, just to make me laugh. If I cried in the bathroom with the shower running, somehow she'd find her way in, sitting on the bath mat, humming to herself like her presence alone could glue me back together. "I'll never leave you alone, Mom," she told me once, her hair still damp from the tub. Eyes deadly serious. "You're my best friend. Alex, you were different. You tried to act grown before your time. You got a part-time job at the grocery store as soon as they'd hire you, coming home with your shoes sticky from spilled soda and your shoulders a little too squared. We fought about that job, remember? I said school came first. You said someone had to be the man now. You were angry sometimes. At me, at the world, at the empty chair where your father used to sit. But you always slipped your paycheck under the sugar jar on the counter, thinking I didn't know. I knew, I just let you think I didn't. So you could feel useful. We had that small life insurance policy from your father's company. Not as much as people imagine, just enough that a financial advisor with a fancy tie told me, "If you're careful, Mrs. Carter, this can buy you some time." I cashed most of it out to catch up on the mortgage, keep you both in the only home you'd ever known. I juggled the numbers on scrap paper late at night, the kitchen lit only by the stove light, adding and subtracting until the columns lined up and my eyes burned. When it came time for college, there wasn't much left, but I took out a loan so Emma could go where she wanted. "You worked too hard for me not to try," she said, crying into my shoulder, the day we moved her into that tiny dorm room. "I'll take care of you when you're old, Mom. I promise." I clung to those words more than she ever knew. College changed her. She met people whose parents owned vacation homes and drove new cars every 2 years. She came back that first Thanksgiving with clothes that didn't come from discount racks and stories about ski trips and internships. I remember pulling up to her campus in my old sedan, paint peeling on the hood, and seeing her glance around before she waved. It was small, just a flicker, but I saw it. In her world now, moms drove nicer cars and wore smooth, expensive makeup. I wore my age and my exhaustion on my face and drove whatever the mechanic could keep running. At her sorority mother-daughter brunch, as I tripped over the white tablecloth and nearly knocked over a centerpiece. She laughed a little too loudly and hissed, "Mom, could you just not make a scene?" Her cheeks were pink with embarrassment, not affection. It stung, but she still held my hand under the table when one of her friends talked about her parents' lake house, and she whispered, "You're the best, Mom, you know that." In my ear, the first time I met Mark was years later after she moved back to the city. She was so excited. "He's different, Mom," she said on the phone. "You'll see." We met at a mid-range restaurant with those faux candles on the tables and music just loud enough that you had to lean in to hear. He stood when I walked in, which impressed me. Not many young men do that anymore. Tall, good-looking in a catalog sort of way, hair too perfectly styled. His handshake was firm, maybe a little too firm. "Mrs. Carter," he said, smiling, "Emma's told me so much about you." "Well, I hope not everything," I joked, trying to ease the tremor in my voice. My palms were sweaty. I hadn't been on a meet, the boyfriend dinner in a long time. He laughed, but there was a flicker in his eyes, something assessing. Over appetizers, he asked about my job. When I told him I'd spent 30 years as a secretary at the same medical office, his eyebrows went up. "You did all this on a secretary's salary," he said, gesturing around like my life was a museum exhibit. The house, the kids through school, impressive. On the surface, it was a compliment. Underneath, there was something else. Like he was studying the blueprint of my life, seeing where the money had gone, where some might still be. I pushed the feeling aside. He insisted on paying the bill at the end with a dramatic flourish of his card. "Please, let me," he said, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "You've done enough, Mrs. Carter." I met his mother, Linda, a few months later at a barbecue Emma hosted. Linda arrived in a cream-colored sweater that seemed ridiculous for grilling weather, not a single hair out of place. She hugged me with just her arms, her body never quite touching mine. "It's so nice to finally meet you," she said, her perfume wrapping around me like a cloud. "We've heard so much about everything you've managed." I didn't know what that meant. Later, while we stood near the picnic table, she sipped her sparkling water and asked, almost casually, "Have you done much estate planning, dear?" Wills, trusts, that sort of thing. It's important at our age. Our age, I thought. She was maybe 5 years younger than me, but she said it like we belonged to some confused herd. I laughed it off. "Oh, I have a simple will," I said. "The house goes to the kids. Nothing fancy." Her eyes flicked over me sharp and quick. "Is it in a trust?" she asked. "Joint tenancy? These things can get so messy. Older people sometimes forget." She smiled like she was sharing a joke. My hand tightened around my plastic cup. "It's all written down," I said, firmer than I meant to. "Alex and Emma will sort it out when the time comes. I'm not planning on going anywhere just yet." She laughed, but her eyes stayed cool. Of course, of course. It's just so important to have someone reliable to help manage affairs when the time comes. Children don't always know what's best." Then she turned away to call Mark over, dropping the subject as if it had been nothing. That was one of the first moments a little knot formed in my stomach. Still, when Emma got engaged, I let myself get swept up. She ran into my house that day, waving her hand in my face, the diamond catching the light. He asked, "Mom," he got down on one knee and everything. We cried together in the kitchen, her tears wetting my shoulder just like they had when she was little. We went to the bridal shop downtown, and I watched her step out of the dressing room in lace and satin, looking more like a stranger and my baby all at once. She saw herself in the mirror and burst into tears. "Don't you dare," I said, dabbing under my own eyes. "You'll get us kicked out for water damage." She laughed through her crying. "What do you think, Mom? Do I look okay?" "You look like the answer to a lot of prayers," I said, and I meant it. At the little cafe afterward, I took her hand. Your father always said he wanted to walk you down the aisle, I told her. I can't give you that, but I can help give you the day you want. Let me cover some of the wedding. It's what he would have wanted. Mom, that's too much, she protested, but her eyes were shining. Let me do this, I insisted. I have some savings. It's your turn now. Mark had joined us then, kissing her cheek loudly. You're too generous, Mrs. Carter, he said. We don't want to be a burden. It's not a burden, I replied. It's my joy. For a while it was joyful. We sat at my kitchen table with swatches of fabric, lists of venues, laughing about silly themes and over-the-top centerpieces. Then, gradually, I noticed a shift. Emma's calls got shorter. I'm busy, Mom. We're doing numbers with Mark's parents. We're meeting with a planner. I'll fill you in later. When I gently questioned a few of the more extravagant choices, a specialty cocktail menu, a photo booth, a live band instead of a DJ, her responses grew sharp around the edges. Mark's parents are covering part of it, she snapped once. You don't have to worry about every little thing. I'm not worrying, I said softly. I just don't want you starting married life buried in debt, she sighed, long and loud. They just do things differently, Mom. Mark's parents are very organized. They have a system. That word made me bristle, organized. Like my way of doing things was chaos. Like 30 years of stretching every dollar didn't count because it wasn't written in a spreadsheet. The first real crack showed over the guest list. We were at her place, papers spread across her coffee table. I had a short list of names, Mrs. Hanley from church, who'd watched Emma and Alex when I worked late, Aunt Denise and Uncle Mike, who drove in from 2 towns over for every birthday. Old neighbors who had known her since she was in diapers. Emma ran her pen hard through several of them. Mom, we can't invite all these people, she said. We have to keep it small to keep costs down. I glanced at the other list on the table, names I didn't recognize. Who's Craig Benson? I asked. Mark's boss. And these, I pointed to 3 more. Golf friends of Mark's dad, she replied. They're important. I felt my face go hot. So my friends, the people who've been there for you your whole life, they're optional, but Mark's dad's golf buddies are essential. She slammed the pen down, the click echoing. Why do you always have to make everything difficult? She snapped. This is my wedding. Mark's parents are contributing. They get some say too. We can't invite every random person you've ever met. Random people, I repeated softly. That's what Mrs. Hanley is to you. She fed you more meals than you remember. Emma's jaw clenched. For a second, I saw a stranger in my daughter's eyes, someone hard, unfamiliar. She opened her mouth, then closed it. I'm sorry, she said stiffly. I'm just stressed. Can we not fight about this? I nodded. But inside, something fragile had splintered. On the phone with you later that week, I remember saying, sometimes I feel like Emma is slipping away from me. You made a noise of sympathy and changed the subject. How could either of us know then that it wasn't just growing up, or wedding stress, or mother-daughter friction? Looking back now, that fight over the guest list was the first time I really saw that something else, someone else, was shaping my daughter's choices. That was just the beginning, I told you now, my fingers tracing the edge of an old photograph. The real trouble started when money got involved in a way it never had before. If the fights had just been about flowers and seating charts, I think I could have brushed them off as normal wedding nerves. But it started to feel like every new decision nudged me a little further out of the picture. It's just a numbers meeting, Mom, Emma said one Tuesday evening over the phone. I could hear clinking glasses and muffled laughter in the background. Mark's parents have this spreadsheet thing they do with their accountant. You'd be so bored. I'm paying for some of those numbers, I said lightly. I thought maybe I should be there. She sighed. That long theatrical sigh she used as a teenager. They just do things differently. We'll tell you everything after, I promise. I've got to go. Love you. The line went dead before I could say I loved her back. 2 days later, I found out from a Facebook post that they'd changed the venue. A glossy picture of a vineyard, all twinkling lights and rustic wooden beams, popped up on my screen with the caption, "So excited for our new dream location." Summed with grateful thuning vibes, I stared at it, blinking. The dream location they'd booked months ago had been a sweet little community hall. The kind of place I could afford without counting every penny twice. This vineyard looked like someplace people rented for magazine shoots. When I called Emma to ask, she sounded breathless and giddy. "Isn't it beautiful? Mark's parents have friends who know the owners. We got a great deal. A great deal is still more money," I said slowly. "Does this change what you need from me?" "Oh my God, Mom, can we not talk about money right now?" she snapped. "We'll figure it out. Just be happy for us." I swallowed whatever I wanted to say. Maybe I was old-fashioned, but I believed in knowing the cost of things before you signed on the dotted line. A week later, she called me at 9:30 at night. I was already in my nightgown. "Mom," her voice was tight, that edge she got when she was trying not to cry. "Is this a bad time?" "No, sweetheart, what's wrong?" My stomach clenched. For a dizzy second, I thought something had happened to Mark or to her. "It's just, the venue deposit is due earlier than we thought," she said. "And Mark's parents have some cash flow stuff this month. Tax things. We'll pay you back after the wedding, I promise." 5,000, the number sat between us like a heavy stone. I pressed the phone harder to my ear. That's a lot, Emma." I know, she rushed in. "You've already helped so much, and I feel awful asking. But if we lose this place, we lose the discount, and all the planning we've done goes out the window." "Mark is freaking out, Mom. Please. It's just temporary." I looked around my quiet living room, threadbare rug, old couch with the spring that squeaked when you sat in the wrong spot. I thought about the bank printouts in my drawer, the careful columns I'd maintained for years. Retirement wasn't a big, cushy number for me. It was a slim line between okay and one medical bill away from disaster. But I also saw Emma as a little girl in a white dress made out of a pillowcase, twirling in the hallway. "When I get married, you'll be there, right, Mom?" she'd asked then. "You'll make me pancakes that morning and fix my hair." "Of course I will," I had said. "Okay," I murmured now. "Okay, honey, I can transfer it in the morning." "You're the best, Mom," she breathed. "We'll pay you back, I swear. You won't regret it." After we hung up, I sat at the desk and logged into my bank account. My hands hovered over the keyboard a little longer than usual. Each zero I typed felt like a piece of something I might need later. But I sent the money, then sat there watching the confirmation screen until it faded. A few days after that, the bank called me. "Mrs. Carter, this is Daniel from First Union. We just wanted to verify a password reset request on your online account." "I didn't request anything," I said, my throat going dry. There was a pause. I could hear computer keys clicking on his end. "All right, then it was probably a mistake or an attempted unauthorized access. We've blocked it for now, but it would be a good idea to update your password when you get a chance. Maybe enable extra security." I wrote down his instructions on a sticky note with a pen that shook slightly. After we hung up, I stared at my phone. For a moment, a thought skittered across my mind like a shadow. Could Emma have tried to log in wrong? Maybe she'd forgotten the password she'd helped me set up once. Then I pushed the thought away. That wasn't fair. People's accounts got pinged by strangers all the time, hackers, scammers. The news was full of it. Still, when I told Alex about it on the phone that weekend, I could hear the concern sharpening his tone. "Mom, that's not nothing," he said. "I'll come by next month and help you lock everything down, okay? In the meantime, don't share your password with anyone, not even family, you promise?" "I promise," I said, though a little voice in the back of my head whispered that I already had. Once or twice, when Emma walked me through something. The first time Emma really cut me in public came at a dress fitting. We were at the boutique, her on the pedestal in front of the mirror, me in a low, plush chair that made my knees ache when I tried to get up. She'd chosen a fitted gown with a plunging neckline and lace all the way up her arms. Beautiful. Certainly. Have you thought about maybe a slightly higher neckline? I asked carefully. The one with the illusion lace you tried last time was so elegant. She stiffened. This is my dress, Mom. I know, I said quickly. You look beautiful. This is my wedding, she cut in, her voice rising loud enough that the salesgirl's head turned. You're not paying for everything. You don't get to control it. The words hit harder than I expected. Not paying for everything. As if the checks I'd written, the savings I'd drained were some trivial contribution barely worth noting. Heat rushed to my face. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. I could feel eyes on us from the other side of the shop. Linda appeared at my elbow, as if summoned by tension. Sweetheart, she cooed to Emma, why don't you go look at veils for a minute? Then she turned to me, gently steering me away from the mirror. You don't want to be that overbearing mother of the bride everyone talks about, she said. Young women need independence these days. Too many cooks in the kitchen just make everything more stressful. I wasn't trying to control anything, I said quietly. I just made a suggestion. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course, but sometimes, our generation has to remember that letting go is part of the process. She patted my arm. You've done so much already. Maybe just step back and enjoy the show. Enjoy the show, as if my daughter's wedding were a performance I'd bought tickets to, not something I'd helped build from the ground up. Later that month, Emma and Mark came over for dinner. I made pot roast, the way Emma liked it, even though the meat was a splurge. Halfway through the meal, between talk of seating charts and honeymoon plans, Mark cleared his throat. So, we were thinking, he said, glancing at Emma. After the wedding, to save up a bit. Just a few months. Help you around the house, you know? Emma nodded eagerly. It'd be fun, Mom, like old times. I looked at the two of them, their hands intertwined on my table. There was a time I would have said yes without hesitation, already planning breakfasts and movie nights. But something in their expectant faces made me wary. We'll see, I said slowly. We'd have to talk about logistics. Totally, Mark said, grinning. It'd also give us time to help you with paperwork stuff. Streamline things. Is the house just in your name, or did you and Mr. Carter put it in a trust? My fork paused halfway to my mouth. He shrugged, all casual charm. Just curious. I'm kind of a nerd about this stuff. If we knew how the house is set up, we could help you. Streamline things. Make it all simpler for you. For everyone. Emma squeezed his hand. We just want to make sure things are simple when you're older, she said, trying to sound light. But her eyes darted away from mine. I heard Linda's voice in my head, talking about older people forgetting what they signed. A cold little ripple ran through me. I have a will, I said. The house goes to you and Alex, equally. It's been that way for years. I don't see any reason to change it. They exchanged a look then, quick and unreadable, like a card trick done too fast. Of course, Mark said smoothly. We were just thinking about efficiency. After they left, I stood in the doorway watching their car pull away, my dish towel twisting in my hands. I couldn't have drawn you a diagram, but I could feel it in my bones. A slow creep from helping to handling, from we're so grateful to your not paying for everything. On the phone with you that night, I tried to explain. But the words sounded small. I'm probably overreacting, I said. It's just, they ask a lot of questions about the house. About my accounts. You went quiet for a beat. Mom, did they ever ask you to sign anything? You finally said, any insurance forms, healthcare directives, anything like that. I thought back, frowning. A half-remembered afternoon came into focus. Emma and Mark at my table with a neat stack of papers. It's just some standard stuff, Emma had said. In case you're ever in the hospital and can't talk, we want to make sure someone you trust is in charge. At the time, I told myself it was responsible, loving even. But now, with your question hanging in the air, it took on a different shade. I think they did, I said slowly. They put a pen in my hand and said it was just for emergencies. I rubbed at a faint ink stain on my thumb, phantom of that day. I tried to brush it off as wedding stress, as them just being organized, I whispered. But looking back, Alex, that might have been the first real sign that this wasn't just about flowers and guest lists anymore. They came over on a Sunday afternoon with a homemade pie and a manila folder, like bad news dressed up as a visit. Emma breezed in first, calling Mom, the way she always had, kissing my cheek and setting the pie on the counter. Mark followed with that smooth smile of his and the folder tucked under his arm. "We brought your favorite," Emma said, lifting the foil. "Apple with the crumb topping." "It's not from the store this time," Mark added, chuckling. "Linda made it." I wiped my hands on a dish towel, looking from the pie to the folder. My stomach did a small, uneasy twist. People my age know, good news doesn't usually come in paper form. We made small talk over coffee how work was for Mark, how the wedding planning was going, which relatives had RSVP'd. After a while, Emma glanced at Mark and cleared her throat. "We wanted to talk to you about something kind of adult." "I'm almost 70, I said dryly. "I hope I qualify." She gave a strained laugh. "You know what I mean." Mark put the folder on the table, sliding it toward me. "We've been doing a lot of, responsible planning lately," he said. "Wills, beneficiaries, that kind of stuff. With the wedding coming up, we thought it was a good time to make sure everyone in the family has their ducks in a row." "That's right," Emma said quickly. "It's not just about us. It's about you and Alex, too." I looked at the folder but didn't touch it. "I have a will," I reminded them. "Mr. Harris drew it up years ago. The house goes to you and your brother. It's simple." "That's great," Mark said, nodding. "But there are other things to consider now. Like if, God forbid, you had a medical emergency. You know, healthcare decisions, bills that need paying. Alex lives so far away, and with his job." He let the sentence drift, as if the conclusion were obvious. "Alex was inconvenient. We just want to make sure I can help if something happens," she said. "So Alex doesn't have to drop everything and fly out." It's not fair to put it all on him. Guilt is a heavy cloak. They knew right where to drape it. I thought of Alex hunched over his laptop on video calls, his life carved up into time zones and deadlines. I didn't want to be another problem on his list. "What exactly are you asking me to sign?" I said finally. Mark opened the folder and pulled out a neat stack of papers with colored sticky flags. "It's standard stuff," he said. "A healthcare proxy, so Emma can talk to doctors if you can't. And a basic power of attorney. Limited," he added quickly. "Just for emergencies." He pushed the top page toward me, pointing to a block of tiny text above a line with my name printed neatly underneath. The words blurred a little, packed tight like ants on the page. I fumbled for my reading glasses. "It just says if you can't speak for yourself, Emma can make decisions," Mark said, tapping impatiently. "Doctors actually like this. It makes their lives easier." "We put Linda on speaker when we went over hours," Emma chimed in, already pulling out her phone. "She said everyone in her bridge club has these. It's standard these days." Before I could object, Linda's voice crackled through the speaker. "Hi, dear," she trilled. "Don't worry, we're not signing away your life here. It's just about making things smoother. At our age, it's really irresponsible not to have this in place." At our age, there it was again. My gut whispered no. Something about the stack of papers, the speed, the way they'd rehearsed their lines, it all rubbed me wrong. But three faces, even one on a phone screen, were looking at me like I'd be foolish to object. "I don't know," I said slowly. "It feels like a lot. Maybe I should talk to Mr. Harris first." Silence. Then a sigh from Linda loud enough to distort the speaker. "Lawyers like to make things complicated so they can bill you, dear," she said. "This is boilerplate. Do you really want to drag some poor man into every decision? You trust your own daughter, don't you?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "Why don't you trust me, Mom?" she whispered. "I'm not trying to take anything from you, I just..." I'm scared something will happen and we won't be able to help. The shame hit hard. There it was, that ugly implication. If you question this, you don't trust your child. What kind of mother does that? Okay, I said, my voice smaller than I meant it to be. One form for medical stuff. Mark smiled, sliding a single page toward me, making sure that was the one I saw clearly. My name, Emma's name, boxes to check. He kept his finger strategically placed over one corner of the text as he explained. This just designates Emma as your agent if you're ever incapacitated, you see, simple. I signed on the indicated lines and dated it. He stacked that page with the others almost immediately, flipping them over before I could read more. Perfect, he said, relief evident. We'll get these notarized. Can I have copies? I asked. He hesitated a fraction of a second too long. Of course, he said then, pulling a few sheets from the stack. We made extras. They left not long after, pressing leftovers into containers and hugging me a little too long. When the door closed, the house fell back into its familiar quiet. But my head was buzzing. I sat at the table and looked through the pages they'd given me. The print was awful dense paragraphs, words like agent and principal in the event of incapacity. It all looked the same, legalese soup. You're being paranoid. I scolded myself. They're just being responsible. Alex would probably tell you to do the same. Still, I slipped the papers into my important folder instead of shoving them in a drawer. A few days later, on the phone, I mentioned it to Alex almost as an afterthought. Oh, that reminds me, I said. Emma and Mark brought over some papers last weekend, health directives they called them, in case I'm ever in the hospital. There was a beat of silence on his end, the kind that means someone just sat up straighter. What kind of papers? He asked carefully. I don't know, honey. A health proxy and a power of something attorney, I think. Emma said it was normal. Linda, too. Mom, send me scans of those papers right now, he said, his voice suddenly sharp. It's not a big deal, I protested. They were trying to take the burden off you. You're always so busy. Mom, just my name. But in that tone he hadn't used since he was a teenager. Please, take pictures. Text them to me. I'm not asking. I sighed, feeling foolish, and did as he asked. The pages, even on my phone screen, looked blurrier than before. When I hit send, my finger lingered over the button, a knot tightening in my chest. He called back 20 minutes later. What exactly did they tell you this was? He asked, no preamble. I told you, I said, healthcare decisions, emergencies. Mom, he said, and I could hear him dragging a hand through his hair the way his father used to. This is more than that. Yes, there's a healthcare proxy. That part's fine. But these other pages, they're not just medical. There's financial language all over them. What? The room tilted a little. I sat down. It gives Emma authority to manage access and control your financial accounts if you're incapacitated, he read. And incapacitated here just means a doctor signs off that you can't manage your affairs. That's vague as hell, Mom. This is not some harmless form. I felt my stomach drop cold and heavy. But they said, I don't care what they said, he cut in. They either didn't understand what they were handing you, or they did and hoped you wouldn't notice. Neither option makes me feel any better. I could feel my heart pounding against my palm. Nausea crept up my throat. I signed something I didn't understand, I whispered. Okay, he said quickly, hearing the panic. Breathe. We'll fix this. But listen to me, do not sign anything else. Not a text, not an email, not another form without me or a lawyer looking at it first. Promise me, I promise, I managed. After we hung up, I called Emma. My fingers shook dialing her number. She answered on the second ring, cheerful. Hey, Mom. I was just about to send you pictures of the centerpieces. Emma, I said, skipping the pleasantries. I talked to Alex. He looked at those papers you and Mark brought. He says they're not just medical. They give you access to my accounts. Silence. Then a sharp exhale. Oh my God, she said. You called Alex about this. Because I didn't understand what I signed, I said, trying to stay calm. Why didn't you tell me it included my finances? We did tell you, she snapped. You just don't remember, Mark explained. The whole thing. He rushed through it, I replied. She made a sound like a choked sob. Why do you always think the worst of me? Mark's parents did the same thing with his grandma. It's normal. Everyone does this. Normal is one thing, I said quietly. Not being honest with me is another. You're making it sound like I'm trying to rob you, she cried. Do you hear yourself? Do you know how hurtful that is? I'm your daughter, Mom. Why are you trying to make me feel like a thief? The word thief hit me like a slap. I didn't call you that, I said, my own voice trembling now. I just asked a question. I can't talk about this right now, she said abruptly. I'm at work and you're stressing me out. Maybe we need to rethink how involved you are in the wedding if you're going to turn everything into an accusation. The line went dead. I stared at my phone, heart racing, shame and confusion swirling together until I couldn't tell one from the other. A few minutes later, a text from Mark flashed on my screen. We were only trying to help. This kind of hostility is why we're rethinking the wedding plans involving you. I stared at the words until they blurred. Plans involving you. As if my presence was a logistical issue, like choosing between chicken or fish. An hour after that, Linda's message arrived. At your age, you should be grateful to have children willing to take responsibility. Not everyone is so lucky. Sometimes older people forget what they signed. That's why we step in. I felt that one like ice water down my back. Forget what they signed. Was that what they were counting on? That I'd be too confused, too trusting, too old. Group texts about wedding details still pinged my phone, but I noticed more and more messages I'd hear about secondhand. Emma posted photos from cake tastings and venue visits online, tagging Mark, tagging Linda, tagging friends. My name was conspicuously absent. At church, a distant cousin caught my arm. I heard there's some drama with the wedding, she said delicately. You know, with you being controlling. The word stunned me. Controlling, I repeated. All I did was ask what I signed. Well, you know how kids talk, she said quickly. I'm sure it's nothing. It didn't feel like nothing. My sleep got light and broken. I'd wake at 3 in the morning with my heart hammering, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. One afternoon at the grocery store, the aisles suddenly seemed too bright, the shelves too close. He must have gone pale because the young cashier left her register to walk me to a bench. Are you okay, ma'am? She asked. At my doctor's office later, my blood pressure cuff squeezed tighter than usual. Dr. Singh frowned at the numbers. You're running high, she said. Just a little stress, I tried to joke. My daughter's getting married. You know how it is. She didn't smile. Stress at your age isn't nothing, she said. Try to avoid conflict if you can. Have you made sure your legal arrangements are clear, powers of attorney, that kind of thing? It can give people peace of mind. I almost laughed at the irony. That's part of the problem, I said bitterly. Back on the phone with Alex, I told him everything. The texts, the way Emma twisted my concern into accusation, Linda's comments about older people forgetting what they sign. This isn't just hurt feelings anymore, he said, anger crackling under his calm. They're maneuvering. I don't know if Emma fully understands it, but Mark and his mother certainly do. He paused. We need help with this, Mom. I want you to call Mr. Harris or I will. I don't want to start a war, I murmured. She's still my daughter. I don't want to ruin her wedding. He sighed. You're not the one ruining anything. You're trying to protect yourself. Later that week, sitting at my kitchen table with the important folder open, I thought about all the times they'd spoken to me slowly, all the little jokes about me, not getting technology, how easily they'd brushed aside my questions. Old, forgetful, overbearing. That's how they wanted me to see myself. I might have been aging, but I wasn't blind, and I certainly wasn't stupid. If they're going to treat me like a senile fool, I told my reflection in the microwave door, then I'll show them exactly how wrong they are. That was the moment I decided if this was a game, I wasn't going to keep playing it on their terms. Alex was on my doorstep less than a week after that phone call. Suitcase in hand, eyes tired in a way that had nothing to do with jet lag. He hugged me longer than usual, his chin rough against my hair. "You look smaller," he said softly, pulling back to study my face. "I haven't shrunk that much," I tried to joke, but my voice came out thin. We didn't waste time. I had already pulled my important folder from the desk, and the kitchen table was cleared, ready like an operating room. Old will, copies of checks, bank statements with yellow highlighter marks, the so-called health directive and power of attorney pages Emma and Mark had brought. "I asked Mr. Harris to stop by," I told Alex. "If that's all right." He drew up the original will. "Good," Alex said. "We need someone who speaks fluent legalese." An hour later, Mr. Harris shuffled in, thinner and grayer than when I'd last seen him. But his eyes were still sharp behind his glasses. He shook my hand, then Alex's, and sat down with a grunt. "Well, Mary," he said, using the name only people who'd known my husband used, "you said there was a situation. Let's see what we're dealing with." I watched his fingers move over the pages, steady despite the tremor in his knuckles. He read more than he talked, lips moving slightly on certain clauses. Alex paced, pausing to point out a line or ask a question. After a while, Mr. Harris set the power of attorney papers down and looked at me over the top of his glasses. "This isn't just poor wording," he said. "Simone wanted broad control." My throat tightened. "Control over what, exactly?" "Over you," he said simply. "Your finances, your medical decisions. These documents, as drafted, would allow your daughter—" He glanced at the page, and by extension her fiancé, "to access your accounts, move your money, even sell property if a doctor declared you unable to manage your own affairs." "That's what you were afraid of," Alex said quietly, looking at me. "And unable to manage is what, dementia?" I asked. My voice wobbled. "Could be," Mr. Harris replied. "But as written here, it's undefined. All it requires is a physician's statement." "I've seen families misuse that." He tapped a paragraph gently. "If someone is determined and persuasive enough, doctors sign papers every day." A memory surfaced unbidden, a cousin's voice at a barbecue, low and gossipy. Linda was saying if she's stubborn, there are ways. Doctors sign forms like candy if you tell them grandma's confused. At the time, I'd brushed it off as ugly talk now. It made my skin crawl. Alex pulled out his phone. "Mom, look at this," he said, thrusting it toward me. On the screen was a screenshot of a Facebook comment from Linda to some friend of hers. "So proud of Emma and Mark. We're helping them secure their future. They'll have a very nice place soon once things are in order with the family home." "Family home?" "She means this house." "There's more," Alex said. He swiped to another screenshot, a text Emma had sent to a cousin who'd sent it to Alex in concern. "Mom is being impossible about paperwork. Linda says I need to protect myself legally before she gets too old, and everything gets messy." I stared at the words until they blurred. Protect myself, from me, as if I were some kind of threat. "We also got your bank logs," Alex said gently, laying another paper down. "I asked them to flag any unusual attempts, like that password reset call." Mr. Harris adjusted his glasses, reading. "Here," he said, circling a line. "There was an attempt to add a joint owner, Emma Carter, to your savings account. The bank blocked it pending your confirmation. Same day these papers were drafted." And here, Alex added, tapping another spot, "Simona tried to initiate a transfer from your account to one labeled M. Joint Savings. The bank's fraud system stopped it because the payee wasn't on file." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the edge of the table. "So they already tried," I whispered, even before I knew what I'd signed. "We can't prove it was Emma or Mark personally without a deeper investigation," Mr. Harris said. "But the timing is suspicious." Fear rose in me like bile, hot and corrosive. Not just hurt feelings, not just harsh words or misunderstandings. They had moved from talking about my future to trying to take pieces of it quietly behind my back. "Do you see now, Mom?" Alex asked, his voice rough. You're not crazy. They are trying to set you up. I pressed my fingers to my eyes, and for a minute I just let myself cry. Not the quiet tears of a sad movie, but the ugly, shaking kind where your chest hurts and your nose runs, and you wish you could cry yourself back 20 years to when your children were still small and easy to protect. They want to erase me before I'm even gone, I said finally, my voice raw. Just make decisions and sign papers and tuck me away somewhere. Mr. Harris was silent for a moment. Then he slid my original will toward me, the one we'd done after my husband died. We're not going to let that happen, he said, but we do need to act. He outlined it like a battle plan. First, we revoke this power of attorney, he said, tapping the offending document, in writing effective immediately. We file that revocation with the county, and we notify any institutions that might rely on it. Your bank, your doctor, your insurance. And my will, I asked. We update it, he said. Not to punish anyone, that's your choice, but to clarify. We can add language about conditions, about oversight. Perhaps name Alex or a neutral party as your agent if you truly cannot act for yourself. We lock down anything that could be exploited. Alex nodded. We should also document everything, he said. The texts, the emails, the bank logs. If they push this further, we'll need a paper trail to show a pattern of coercion and misrepresentation. The word coercion sounded like something from a crime show, not my living room. But here we were, and the wedding money, I asked quietly. The deposits. The extra loan. Alex had already done the math. None of it went through a separate wedding account like they said. He said, every check, every transfer you made went straight into Mark's personal account. There's no written agreement about repayment. So I just gave it away, I said. The realization stung, but underneath the sting was a strange, cooling relief. Well, then that's done. I can't pull that back, but I can stop giving. If they see me as a burden, I added slowly, maybe it's time I stop acting like a safety net. Mr. Harris gave a small, approving nod. You have more power than you think, he said. And the law is not automatically on the side of pushy children, no matter how confident they sound at dinner parties. A faint, bitter laugh escaped me. I wiped my face with the heel of my hand. The raw edge of grief was still there. Not revenge, at least not yet, but self-preservation. A kind of righteous anger I hadn't felt in years. We won't tell them right away, Alex said. If we confront them now, they'll just spin it, make you the villain, maybe rush to do something worse before we can shore things up. Mr. Harris agreed. Quietly first, he said. We revoke, we update, we notify. We let institutions know to contact you directly if anyone presents old documents. We get your house and accounts ring-fenced, so to speak. And then I asked, then he said, when everything is secure, we decide if and how to tell them. Preferably in a way that doesn't leave you alone in a room with people who see you as an obstacle to their plans. I looked around my little kitchen. The chipped mug by the sink, the photo of my husband on the fridge, the folder of my life spread out like a crime scene. For the first time since Emma's text, I felt something like steadiness return to my spine. They thought I'd just sit here and let them decide what happens to me, I said. They thought I wouldn't notice, or if I did, I'd be too ashamed to speak up. Alex reached across the table and took my hand. Mr. Harris folded the revocation form and slid a pen toward me. Sign here, he said, and we start taking your life back. I signed, my hand sure. As the ink dried, I felt the first faint glimmer of something I hadn't felt in a long time. We had a plan for my money for my house. And whether Emma liked it or not, for the role I would play in their picture-perfect wedding. Mr. Harris moved slower than he used to. But that week he was a force. He came back to the house with a briefcase that looked too big for his thin frame. But when he opened it on my table, the air in the room changed. There were no pies or fake smiles this time. Just paper pens and a quiet determination that steadied me more than I expected. All right, Mary, he said, settling his glasses on his nose. First, we clean up the mess they almost made. Then we lock the doors so they can't try again. He slid a document toward me, printed on his letterhead. This revokes any and all powers of attorney granted to Emma Carter or anyone acting through her, he explained. Once you sign this, any bank, hospital, or court that sees the old one has to treat it like it never existed, provided we notify them properly. I read every line, lips moving like a child learning to read. It felt good to take my time. No one rushed me. When I picked up the pen, my hand was steady. I may be old, I said quietly, signing, but I am not disposable. Nor are you Nav, he replied. Not anymore. Next came the new will. The old one had been simple, a few pages dividing the house and what little money we had between Alex and Emma. This one was thicker, with paragraphs that made my head swim, but Mr. Harris walked me through each part. Your house remains split equally between the children, he said. But we make clear that any sale or transfer requires both signatures, plus oversight from a neutral executor. That makes it harder for one party to act without the other. Alex, I said. I trust him to make decisions if I can't. He nodded. We'll name him primary agent for financial matters. For health care, we can still list both if you like, but with safeguards. Doctors must get a second opinion before declaring you incapacitated, and no long-term care placement without an independent evaluation. Somewhere in the middle of the explanations, I felt a heaviness in my chest, not from fear this time, but from grief. I had imagined Emma holding my hand at doctor's appointments when I got old, helping me pick out comfortable shoes, sorting my pills into little boxes. Now I was putting her name on paper with rules attached, as if she were a stranger who needed boundaries. It doesn't mean you don't love her, Mr. Harris said gently, reading my face. It just means you've learned where the cracks are. Love without boundaries is how people like Mark thrive. I won't be your piggy bank and your victim, I murmured, surprising myself with the steel in my own voice. At the bank, Alex walked on one side of me, Mr. Harris on the other. The young woman at the desk glanced up, saw 3 determined faces, and straightened in her chair. We need to put some additional protections on Mrs. Carter's accounts, Mr. Harris said, sliding over the revocation and his card. Fraud alerts. No changes to ownership without her in person with ID and a call to my office. And we'd like to remove any pending additions you have on file. The banker's polite expression flickered when she pulled up my profile. There was a request to add an authorized user last month, she admitted. It was flagged and held. I see now it's been canceled. Good, Alex said crisply. Going forward, you treat any such request as fraudulent unless my mother is standing right here. We moved some money too. Not everything. That would have raised more questions than it answered, but enough. A portion of my savings went into a new account with a bland name. No online access, only in-person transactions. If Emma or Mark ever did get their hands on my login again, they'd think the cupboard was barer than it was. Walking out of that bank, I felt lighter and older at the same time. It's a strange thing, realizing you have to hide your stability from your own child. What about the wedding money? I asked in the car. The deposits. Can we get any of it back? Realistically, Mr. Harris sighed. Probably not. You voluntarily transferred the funds. There's no contract saying they had to use it a certain way. So they win, I said bitterly. Not necessarily, he replied. You can stop any further funds, and you can put your position in writing. A formal letter stating that you will not be paying another dime toward wedding or living expenses. That you expect an accounting of what you've already given if they ever come asking for more. Do I send it now? I asked. Before the wedding, after. Alex tapped the steering wheel, thinking. If you send it now, they might lash out, try something drastic. If you wait until everything's legally nailed down and timed right, he glanced at Mr. Harris. Maybe we time it so they can't quietly fix the narrative after. We'll consider the timing, Mr. Harris agreed. But the decision itself is yours. No more open checkbook. Back at home, Alex helped me with something that felt small but made me feel oddly powerful. He installed a little recording app on my phone. Check your state laws, he said, but as long as one party knows the conversation is being recorded and you're that party, you're within your rights. You don't have to use it unless they start pushing you again. Just having it is insurance. Against my own daughter. We sat together on the couch, scrolling through old texts. Messages where Emma hinted about rethinking your involvement. After I questioned the papers. Mark's warning about hostility affecting wedding plans. Linda's snide line about older people forgetting what they sign. Screenshots, timestamps, Alex said, emailing them to himself and printing hard copies for Mr. Harris. If this ends up in front of a judge one day, it won't just be your word against theirs. You really think it could come to that? I asked. But I'd rather have it and not need it than the other way around. At night, when the house went quiet again and the legal frenzy cooled, another kind of thought crept in. A softer one with thorns. I still pictured Emma in her dress sometimes, turning to look for me as she walked down the aisle, eyes searching the crowd. I imagined her standing at the back of the church, fidgeting with her bouquet, saying, "Where's my mom? She has to be here. She always said she would be." I still want to see her get married, I admitted to Alex one evening, the two of us sitting at the table with takeout containers between us. Part of me wants to sneak in, sit in the back like a stranger, and just see her happy. He set down his fork, and the other part. The other part remembers that text, I said. Don't come to my wedding. It's better for everyone if you stay away. She made it a condition, like my presence is a problem to solve. He was quiet for a moment. We're not sabotaging the wedding, he said finally. We're stopping them from sabotaging your life. That's the part that hurts, I said. That standing up for myself feels like standing against my own child. Mr. Harris, ever practical, saw it differently. They had no problem humiliating you with that message, he reminded me when I voiced my guilt to him. Family or not, actions have consequences. Protecting yourself isn't cruelty, it's survival. It was Alex who came up with the idea of the wedding day twist, as he called it. Though the phrase made my stomach flip. Right now they think they've boxed you in, he said. You're funding things, but they're cutting you out emotionally and legally. If we serve notice revocation letters, your new will's existence, a clear statement about money too early, they might backpedal, quietly spin a new story. And if we wait, I asked, if we time it so those letters arrive right before or even during the wedding weekend, he said slowly. They won't have the luxury of hiding it. They'll be too busy managing appearances. You won't be there to be blamed on the spot. But the institutions, the lawyers, even some family members will see that you took back control. The idea made me queasy and relieved in equal measure. I pictured a courier walking into a room full of flowers and champagne, handing Emma or Mark an envelope with Mr. Harris's letterhead. I imagined Linda's face going tight, Mark's smile freezing. And what about Emma? I whispered. I don't want her humiliated in front of everyone, not on that day. Mr. Harris folded his hands. Consider which humiliation is worse, he said gently. The one you'd be sparing her, or the one they planned for you. Being quietly stripped of your autonomy, maybe moved out of your home, all under the guise of helping. Silence sat heavy between us. You're right. My self-respect and my safety have to come first. If she feels some embarrassment because I refuse to be steamrolled, that's hers to reckon with. We set the plan in motion. Revocation notices drafted not just for Emma and Mark, but copied to the bank, to my doctor, to the county clerk. A simple letter from me, waiting in Mr. Harris's outbox, stating clearly that I would not be providing any additional financial support for the wedding or their household, and that I expected any future discussion of money to go through him. We agreed that those documents would go out close to the wedding date, when everything on their end was most precarious, when any attempt to retaliate would be tangled up in their own careful image. At night, lying in my bed, I ran my fingers over the worn edge of the quilt my husband's mother had made us. The house creaked in familiar ways. For the first time in weeks, when I closed my eyes, I didn't see myself in some sterile nursing home, belongings sold off, signatures forged. I saw myself at this same table, years from now, paying my own bills, calling my own shots, even if I had to do it with reading glasses and a magnifying glass. And then I told Alex on the phone later, when I heard the first hint of doubt in his voice. A few days before the wedding, Emma sent that message. She thought she was cutting me off. She had no idea I was already one step ahead. The text came 2 days after we finalized everything with Mr. Harris. I was back at the kitchen table where this all began, sipping lukewarm tea, when my phone buzzed. Emma's name lit up the screen. My heart did its old hopeful leap before my brain caught up and braced. "Mom, don't come to my wedding. It's better for everyone if you stay away." The first time I read those words, I was blindsided. This time, I saw the fingerprints on them. Mark's cool logic, Linda's careful phrasing. Better for everyone sounded like something decided in a meeting, not born in my daughter's heart. I stared at the message for a long moment. The instinct to beg, to ask why, rose up like a reflex and then passed. Instead, I typed slowly, choosing each word the way I'd been taught to choose signatures now. "I understand. I still love you, and I wish you happiness." My thumb hovered, then pressed send. No accusation, no drama. Just a statement that I wasn't going to claw at a door they had closed. Then I forwarded her message with my reply underneath. To Alex and to Mr. Harris. One more piece of evidence, not just of their plan, but of the emotional pressure they were willing to apply. Alex called almost immediately. "You okay?" he asked. Voice tight. "No," I said honestly. "But I'm steady. That will have to be enough." In the days leading up to the wedding, the plan moved from paper to action. Mr. Harris mailed out certified letters, each one like a small stone dropped into the still water of their carefully curated life. One envelope addressed to Emma and Mark at their condo, revoking any authority Emma might believe she held over my finances or health care. Another to the bank, enclosing the revocation and the instructions we'd arranged in person. A copy to Linda and her husband, since they'd inserted themselves into my affairs so eagerly. A thicker packet to the county clerk, updating records and making sure any old documents would show as superseded. "These will likely arrive the day before or the morning of the wedding," Mr. Harris said. "They'll have more on their minds than plotting around you and less time to concoct a response." I went back to the bank one more time, just to look the manager in the eye and ask my questions. She assured me the alerts were in place, that any attempt to change ownership or initiate large transfers would require my physical presence and ID. "At this point," she said, "if anyone shows up with documents claiming power of attorney over you, we'll call you and your attorney before we even think about it." Hearing that, a knot I hadn't known I was carrying loosened a little. At home, I sat at my desk and wrote a different kind of document, a letter to Emma. Not the sentimental note I'd once planned to tuck into her wedding album, but a clear, calm explanation. I told her exactly what I had signed and what Mr. Harris had found in those papers. I told her that I had revoked every authority she might have believed she possessed over my life and money. I told her I would no longer fund any part of the wedding or their future expenses, and that any discussion of finances from this point on would go through my lawyer. But I also told her that I loved her, that I had always loved her, that protecting myself did not mean my love had died, only that I had finally learned the cost of blind trust. I ended it with, "I hope one day you will understand why I had to draw these lines. Until then, know that the door to my heart is not locked, even if the door to my bank account is." I printed the letter, signed it, and slid it into an envelope addressed to her. Then I set it on the table in front of me and left it there for 3 days. Timing mattered. Once it went out, there would be no taking it back. The morning of the wedding dawned bright. I knew because my phone lit up with other people's excitement. A cousin posted a smiling photo from outside the venue. "Can't believe Emma's big day is here." Another friend of Emma's shared a picture of her hair in curlers, champagne glass in hand, bride squad getting ready. Through their little squares, I saw glimpses of my daughter's mourning. A white robe with bride on the back. Makeup brushes. A dress bag hung reverently on a hook. Laughter. I sat on my own couch in a simple navy dress. Hair done, shoes on, as if I were going somewhere. Old habits are hard to break. My hands rested on the envelope in my lap. A part of me still whispered, you could drive over, slip in the back, no one could stop you from sitting in a pew from watching her say her vows. But louder now was the memory of that text. Don't come. Better for everyone. I pictured myself walking into that beautiful room only to be met with tight smiles, whispered comments, maybe even a scene. I pictured Mark's satisfaction at seeing me small and desperate. Number if they didn't want me there as her mother, they didn't get me there as a bystander. They didn't get my presents or my money. Around mid-morning, Alex called from his car. I could hear the turn signal clicking and the low hum of traffic. I'm 5 minutes from the venue, he said. Mom, you sure you don't want me to skip this? You go, I said. You're her brother. You have your own relationship to weigh. He was silent for a beat, then he said, there's something you need to know before today really starts. My spine straightened. What happened? I stopped for gas, he said, and Mark was at the next pump with his dad. They didn't see me. They were talking about you. What did they say? Alex's voice hardened. Mark called you old and clueless. Said it's a blessing. You're not coming because it'll make it easier to get the house sorted after the honeymoon without her hanging around asking questions. His dad laughed. I had thought I was fresh out of hurt. I was wrong. The insult stung, but the casual way they talked about my home, my life, as something to be sorted like boxes in a garage made me physically cold. They think you're helpless, Mom, Alex added quietly. They're laughing about it. For a moment, I just breathed in out. I looked down at the envelope in my lap, my name in my own handwriting on the return corner. My hands stopped shaking. Let them laugh, I said. Today they'll find out who they're really dealing with. I walked to my desk, sat down, and opened my email. I attached a scanned copy of the letter to Emma, added a brief note to Mr. Harris authorizing him to send his own packets immediately, and CC'd Alex. Then, after one last look, I hit send on my email to Emma. In the subject line I wrote, "From your mother on your wedding day." Before I could second-guess myself, I also forwarded it to Linda and her husband, and to one cousin I trusted not to twist things, with a single line for transparency since my presence has been discussed. Done, I told Alex. Mr. Harris can file whatever additional notices he needs. The timing is yours now. I'll check my phone, he said. If anything started hitting their inboxes already, I'll know. I heard him put the car in park. Voices in the background, muffled music. The bright, expectant chaos of a wedding venue. I'm going in, he said. Phone's on, recording's on. If they start anything, I'll be ready. Remember, I said softly, you're there for you, not to be my soldier. Don't let them drag you into something that hurts you. I'm not a kid anymore, Mom, he replied. They want a show today. They're going to get one. It just might not be the one they rehearsed. The line stayed open for a second. I heard a door slam, footsteps on gravel, distant laughter. Then the muffled noise of a lobby as the call ended. I stood in my quiet living room, the tick of the clock loud in the silence. I wasn't at my daughter's wedding. I wasn't pinning her veil or fixing her lipstick. But my truth in black and white was there in their hands, whether they liked it or not. I didn't see the scene with my own eyes. I heard it later in pieces, from Alex, from Mr. Harris, from a cousin whose voice shook when she called me that night. But I could picture it all too well. Emma was in a small side room off the main hall, standing in front of a mirror while her friends fussed with the buttons down her back. Lace spilled over the carpet like a cloud. Someone was misting hairspray. Someone else adjusted the veil. Her phone buzzed on the vanity. Then again, and again. Just turn it off, one of the bridesmaids said. You don't need stress right now. Emma ignored her. She picked up the phone. There, on the screen, was my email from your mother on your wedding day. Behind it, notifications from Mr. Harris's office. Legal subject lines. Words like revocation, An update to Will. Another email. CC'd to Linda and her husband. What is it? Linda asked, appearing in the doorway, already in her pale blue mother of the groom dress, lips pressed into a thin line. Emma clicked open my message. Her eyes scanned the first paragraphs, her face draining of color. It's from Mom, she whispered. Shit, she changed everything. She revoked the papers. She's not paying for anything else. What? Linda's voice sharpened. She snatched the phone, reading faster than Emma had. Her jaw clenched. She had her lawyer send notices, she hissed. To us. To the bank. She's making you look like. A sharp knock interrupted them. A young man in a blazer stood in the doorway, a courier envelope in his hand, looking painfully out of place amid tulle and lipstick. Delivery for Emma Carter and Mark Benson, he said. It's marked urgent. Linda's nostrils flared. This is absurd, she snapped, but she took the packet. Inside were hard copies of the revocation and a cover letter from Mr. Harris, polite but unequivocal. Due to concerns regarding recent attempts to access Mrs. Carter's financial accounts without full disclosure, all previously granted powers of attorney to Emma Carter are hereby revoked. What stunt is she pulling? Linda demanded. On this day of all days. In the hallway, Alex had arrived early, suit slightly rumpled from the drive. He'd checked in with the planner, found his seat assignment, and then wandered toward the bridal suite, intending to drop off a simple congratulations card and see his sister before everything started. He stopped when he heard Linda's voice through the slightly ajar door. Your mother's little stunt today. She's trying to sabotage the wedding. He pushed the door open further. What stunt, exactly? He asked. They all jumped. Emma turned, eyes red-rimmed. Mark, in his shirt sleeves, stood in a corner, phone in one hand, brow furrowed as if doing mental math. Linda clutched the envelope like it might bite her. You have nerve walking in here, she said to Alex. Is this your idea? You and that ancient lawyer? Alex stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him with a soft click. My idea, he said calmly, was to stop my mother from being robbed under the guise of help. Looks like it's working. Emma swallowed. Alex, she sent me this letter. She stammered, holding up her phone, saying she thinks we were trying to control everything. It's not true, we were just... He held up a hand. Don't, he said quietly. I've seen the documents, Em. I've seen the bank logs. I know about the attempted joint account, the transfer to your Mark savings. I know about the clause that would have let you and Mark declare her incapable with one doctor's note and start making every decision about her life. That's not. Mark began, stepping forward. Alex's gaze snapped to him. You don't get to call it helping when you're trying to take our mother's life out from under her, he said. You tried to get access to her money before the ink on those forms was even dry. Mark's jaw tightened. We were consolidating, he said. It's called estate planning. You clearly don't understand how these things work. Oh, I understand just fine, Alex shot back. What I don't understand is how you look at a woman who worked herself to the bone to raise 2 kids and think, she's going to die eventually, why shouldn't we plan ahead and make sure we get the house? Mark blinked, stung. Linda turned on him. You actually said that out loud, she hissed. You were the one who said we needed control before she gets sick. He snapped, color rising in his cheeks. You're the one who pushed the paperwork, who told me doctors sign things every day if you talk about confusion and safety. Emma's head swiveled between them. Stop it, she whispered. Just stop. This is my wedding day. Alex pulled some folded pages from his inside pocket. Printouts of the power of attorney, with key passages highlighted. Let me make something very clear, he said, voice low but carrying. Mom has revoked every bit of this. She's notified the bank. She's updated her will. Whatever little scheme you thought you had, it's dead. Emma shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. It wasn't a scheme, she insisted, but her voice wavered. Linda said this is what responsible families do. Mark said we had to protect ourselves legally, in case you tried to take everything. Alex's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. Protect yourselves from what? From a 70-year-old woman paying your wedding bills. He pulled out another page, a printout of my letter. Did you actually read what she wrote, Em? Or did you just see the words revoked and no more money and stop there? He moved closer, lowering his voice. She's still leaving the house to both of us. Equally. She's just making sure no one can shove her into a nursing home and sign the deed while she's doped up on medication. She's protecting herself from exactly the kind of planning you two have been doing. Emma's face crumpled. She took the letter with shaking hands, eyes racing over my words. Revoked. Love. Boundaries. I will not be used. Outside the cracked door, voices were starting to gather. A bridesmaid, uncomfortable, whispered, "Should we go?" Another voice, an aunt, murmured, "What's happening in there?" Linda straightened, smoothing her dress. "This is not the time or place to discuss this," she said sharply. "We can handle legal matters after the ceremony." Alex turned toward her. "That would be convenient for you," he said. "But you don't get to walk my sister down an aisle built on lies." Emma flinched. "Why are you doing this?" she burst out. "Why are you ruining my wedding?" He looked at her long and hard. "I didn't tell Mom to send those letters today," he said. "She did that on her own. The only thing I'm doing is giving you information before you make vows in front of a room full of people. You want this man to be your partner. Fine. But you're not going to do it under the illusion that Mom is some dotty old woman you can quietly put away while you strip her life for parts." Mark stepped closer to Emma. "You don't have to listen to this," he said. "He's jealous. He's always thought he knew better than you. We're just trying to make our future secure." "Our future?" Emma echoed. She looked down at the printouts in her hands, legalese in black and white, my handwriting at the bottom of the letter. "You told me this was just in case Mom ends up in the hospital," she said to Mark. "You told me it was what your family did." "It is," Linda cut in. "My mother was grateful when we stepped in. Your mother cried in the parking lot of that facility every time I saw her," Alex said coldly. "Don't twist that into kindness." The room was humming now with tension. A bridesmaid slipped out, and I imagined the whispers racing down the hall. "There's some kind of fight. With the brother. And the lawyer." Mark's father hovered near the doorway, face pale. Alex took a breath, his tone softened a notch. I'm going to say this once," he said. "You have a choice right now. You can go through with this wedding, smile for the pictures, pretend everything's fine. But understand Mom's money is off the table. There is no safety net. No bailouts when Mark's plans fall apart. Or," he let the word hang, "or you can take responsibility," he continued. "Postpone this. Sit down with Mom, with a neutral lawyer, talk honestly about what's been going on. Ask yourself if this is really how you want to start your marriage." Emma looked at her reflection in the mirror. Eyes swollen, makeup smudged, veil slightly askew. This was not the bride she'd pinned on her vision boards. For a long moment, no one breathed. "I can't call it off," she whispered. "People are here. The money's spent. I can't undo all of this." Linda exhaled, relieved. "Exactly," she said. "We will get through today, and then—" Emma cut her off, voice raw. "But after today," she said, looking at Alex, "there's nothing coming from Mom. Is that what you're telling me?" "Not unless she decides, of her own free will, with full information," he said. "And not a cent without paper trails and witnesses. Those days of slipping her a pen and saying sign here are over." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, there was something brittle and strange in her gaze. "Then I guess we get married without her," she said. "Just like she wants." "That's not what she wants," Alex said softly. "It's just what she can live with." The ceremony went ahead. I know this because people posted pictures. Emma in her dress, Mark in his suit, smiles a little tighter than they might have been otherwise. In some photos, if you look closely, you can see red around her eyes that no amount of concealer quite hid. Later that evening, as the sun went down and the reception lights came up at that fancy vineyard, my phone rang. It was Mr. Harris. "It was a volcano, Mary," he said, not unkindly. "Your son handled himself well." There was shouting in back rooms, some very ugly words from the young man, and I suspect Linda will not be sending me a Christmas card this year. But the important thing is everyone now knows your position, and legally you are safer today than you were yesterday. "What about Emma?" I asked, my voice small. "How did she look?" "Torn," he said honestly. Hurt, but not unaware. Sometimes the first crack in a spell is seeing the paperwork under it. After the wedding, life didn't magically become neat. Justice rarely comes with tidy bows. From what Alex told me, and from the bits that reached me through the family grapevine, the shine wore off that marriage faster than Emma expected. Without my bank account as a backup, the bills felt heavier. Wedding debts didn't vanish just because the cake had been cut. Mark's promotion didn't materialize on schedule. Linda, furious about being humiliated by those letters, tightened her own purse strings, making it clear that any help from their side came with even more conditions than mine ever had. Money stress has a way of stripping niceties. Mark's comments about me grew nastier, less guarded. She was going to die eventually. Why shouldn't we plan ahead? He reportedly said one night after a few drinks, not realizing a cousin was within earshot. Now we've got to tiptoe around because her precious son lawyered up. That cousin called me, voice shaking with anger. I'm so sorry, Aunt Mary, she said. I didn't know he could be that cold. I did, I thought, but I only said, thank you for telling me. A month passed. I got on with my days. My garden, my church, my book club. I learned how to enjoy my own company again without everything revolving around someone else's crisis. There were nights I lay awake, missing the daughter who used to call me for recipes and advice, but the terror that had once sat on my chest was gone. In its place was a sad, clear knowledge I couldn't fix Emma's choices. I could only refuse to be collateral damage. One evening, as I was watering the geraniums on the porch, my phone rang. Emma's name lit up the screen. For a second, my thumb froze. I answered. Mom. Her voice was small, hoarse, like she'd been crying. We need to talk. My heart clenched. There it was, that mix of love and caution I was still learning to hold at the same time. All right, I said, sitting down on the porch step. We can talk. Justice doesn't always look like handcuffs or courtroom speeches. Sometimes it's quieter. It's a woman saying, no more, after a lifetime of course, dear. It's a son standing in a doorway and refusing to let a ceremony become a cover for a theft. It's legal documents, notarized and filed, saying in black and white what your voice finally learned to say out loud. But even when the lines are drawn, there are still pieces of your heart left scattered on the floor, waiting to be picked up. Emma didn't come the next day or the next week. For a while, life settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. No more calls about vendors or deposits, no more tense, just checking in texts. The house felt bigger. Sometimes it felt like freedom. Sometimes it felt like a wound. When she finally did appear on my porch, it was almost 3 months after the wedding. I was trimming the dead leaves off my geraniums when I heard a car door slam. I looked up and there she was at the gate, not in a carefully curated outfit, not with her hair styled for a photograph, but in an oversized sweatshirt and jeans, dark circles under her eyes. She looked older than her 28 years in a way that had nothing to do with time. Hi, Mom, she said, voice small. For a second, I just stared. My mind flashed through images, her as a toddler with scraped knees, her in that white robe the morning of the wedding on someone else's phone screen, her name at the bottom of those papers. Then I stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, I said. We sat at the kitchen table, the same place so much of this had unfolded. She wrapped her hands around a mug of tea she didn't drink, eyes fixed on the steam. I'm sorry, she blurted, and the words seemed to cost her something. I'm so sorry. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I've learned in my life that if you let a silence sit, sometimes the truth crawls into it. I thought it was normal, she said eventually, voice cracking. Linda said everyone does those papers. That responsible children take care of things before it's too late. Mark said Alex would just leave everything to you and not help. And I'd be stuck. They made it sound like if I didn't sign, I was being neglectful. A bad daughter. And telling me not to come to your wedding, I asked quietly. Was that normal too? She flinched like I'd hit her. Tears spilled over. That was Mark, she whispered. He typed it. I didn't stop him. I was so angry about the letters, about the money. Linda was furious, saying you'd humiliated us. Mark said you were trying to control us even from a distance. He said it would just be easier if you weren't there, that you'd cause a scene. And I let him press send. She buried her face in her hands. I hated myself the second it went through, she said. I told myself you were being dramatic anyway, that you'd hurt me first, that if you really loved me, you'd swallow it and come anyway. That's an interesting definition of love, I said, not unkindly. Simone tells you not to show up and you prove your love by ignoring your own dignity. She winced. I deserve that, she whispered. I know I do. I took a breath, steadying my own voice. Emma, I need you to understand something. It wasn't just about the money. It was the way you all talked about me. Like I was a problem to manage. Like I was halfway gone already. Like my whole life's work, the house, the savings was just a prize waiting for the fastest hands. I never saw it that way, she protested weakly. But then her shoulders sagged. Maybe I did. Not at first. But the more Linda talked, the more Mark talked. Of course we should know everything about your finances, of course we should. Plan around you, they made it sound smart, adult. Greed dresses itself up in nice language, I said. Responsibility, security, planning. But at the end of the day, Emma, the question is simple. Were you thinking about what was best for me or what was best for you? She didn't answer. Her silence answered for her. I'm not telling you this to punish you over and over, I continued, but I need you to know how deep it cut. Not just those documents, that text. Seeing my own child write that her wedding would be better for everyone. If I stayed away, I have buried a husband. I have buried friends. But reading that was a kind of death I wasn't prepared for. She sobbed openly now, shoulders shaking. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I believe you're sorry, I said. But apology doesn't rewind the tape. It doesn't unsign things. It doesn't unpack boxes in some nursing home you might have shuffled me into one day because it was for my own good. She looked up, eyes red. I wouldn't have. You don't know what you would have done. I cut in gently, because you'd already done more than I ever thought you were capable of. That's the truth we have to sit with. We sat there for a while, the only sound her uneven breathing and the hum of the fridge. Things with Mark aren't good, she said eventually, voice dull. He's not who I thought. He's furious you cut us off. We fight about money constantly. Linda keeps saying we should revisit the legal stuff, find another way. I don't want to sign anything anymore. I don't trust any of it. Or them. I didn't say I told you so. That's one of the few privileges age gives you, knowing when to let a lesson sit. Are you safe? I asked instead. Has he ever touched you in anger? She shook her head. Number he yells, slams doors. Once he punched the wall behind me, but he's never, not yet. The yet hung there heavy. You know you can leave, I said quietly. Marriage is a promise, but it isn't a prison. If you decide to go, you can come here. Not as a permanent dependent, not with our lives all tangled up like before, but you'd have a soft place to land while you figured things out. She looked at me, surprised. After everything I did, you'd still let me come home. I won't hand you my checkbook, I said. I won't sign a single paper without my lawyer in the room. I won't add your name to my accounts. Those days are over, Emma. That's not because I don't love you. It's because I finally love myself enough to draw lines. She nodded slowly. I understand, she whispered. I think I do. We talked a long time that day. Not everything was healed. How could it be? Trust, once shattered, doesn't grow back overnight like a weed. It grows. If at all, like an old tree, slow and crooked, with scars you can still see. If you're waiting for me to say she left Mark and moved back in and we all lived happily ever after, I'll disappoint you. Life isn't that tidy. She's still with him as I tell this. Though there are more cracks in that foundation than she's ready to admit. We see each other now, cautiously. Coffee at my table once a week. Sometimes she comes alone, sometimes with a tight face and stories about his latest complaint. I listen. I offer what wisdom I can without lecturing. Alex and I, on the other hand, are closer than we've been in years. This whole mess forced conversations we'd both been avoiding. About my will, about what I want if I can't speak for myself. About which hospital I'd prefer. Even about funeral songs. Grim topics, maybe. But I sleep better knowing we've said the quiet parts out loud. Just promise me one thing, he said once, looking at my stack of neatly labeled folders. As long as you can make decisions, you make them. Don't hand that over to me or anyone else before you have to. I can promise you that, I said. As for Mark and Linda, they're still out there circling their own wagons. Word gets around in families. People heard about the letters, about the scene at the wedding, about the ugly phrases that slipped from Mark's mouth when he thought only allies were listening. Some relatives still take their side, muttering about overacting and airing dirty laundry. Others have quietly started checking their own paperwork, calling their own lawyers. Linda doesn't speak to me directly now, which is fine by me. When we end up in the same room at some extended gathering, she gives me a thin smile and an even thinner nod, like we're adversaries at a country club. But she hasn't tried to insert herself into my affairs again. Legally, she can't. Socially, she knows better now than to assume I'll smile and swallow whatever's served. Mark's big financial plans never quite took off. Without my money as silent backing, he's had to face the reality of his own choices. I'd be lying if I said that gives me no satisfaction at all. Sitting here now in this same kitchen where so much of this story took place, I feel something I didn't think I'd get back: safety. Not the kind that comes from pretending everything's fine, but the kind that comes from knowing I have protections in place. If you're listening to this and you're an older parent or grandparent, I want you to hear this part clearly. Being generous does not mean giving people permission to control you. Helping your children is not the same thing as handing them the keys to your life. Love and respect have to go both ways. If someone only knocks on your door when they want your money or your signature, that's not love. That's opportunism with a smile. Greed can twist love into something unrecognizable. It can make a daughter believe that signing away her mother's rights is responsible. It can make a son-in-law talk about your death like it's a financial strategy. You are allowed to ask questions. You are allowed to take papers to a lawyer and say, "Explain this to me line by line." No matter how embarrassed your children act, protect your future. Talk to someone you trust: a lawyer, a financial advisor, even a sharp-eyed friend. It's not paranoia, it's wisdom. You work too hard to build whatever little nest you have to let somebody else shake it apart because they tell you it's for your own good. As for Emma, I'm still her mother. That hasn't changed. I hold her tighter now when she cries, but I hold my boundaries just as firmly. I've accepted that we may never have the easy storybook relationship I once imagined. But I'm proud that when the test came, I didn't disappear into the role they'd written for me, the confused, compliant old woman. I stood up with shaking knees and a pounding heart, and I said no more. So let me ask you, if you were in my place, do you think you could forgive a child who tried to take control of your life and your finances? Where would you draw the line between helping and being used? And on a more personal note, have you ever felt someone in your family treated you differently because of money or inheritance? Maybe their tone changed when they heard what you owned, or they only called when they needed a little favor. What did you do about it? Did you speak up or stay quiet to keep the peace? One more question, because I've asked myself this 1,000 times. If you were me, would you have gone to that wedding anyway? Sat in the back with your heart in your throat? Or stayed home like I did and chosen your self-respect over a photograph? If my story made you think, tell me in the comments what you would have done. I read those. They remind me I'm not the only one walking this road. And if you want to hear more stories like this, about families, about choices, about where love ends and self-respect begins, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and let me know where you're listening from. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your hearts and of your homes. Because in the end, those are the things you have to live inside, long after everyone else has.